Hello, I'm Mark Can, CEO and co-CTO of CyromatiKs Product Development. In this video, we're going to talk about EVs 2.0. And the era of EVs 2.0 is really going to be defined by the ability to replace the onboard energy capacity at a very rapid pace. But before we get to EVs 2.0, let's take a really quick brief history through the prior EV integrations. And we're going to start off with what we consider to be the EVs point 1 to point 9, which was not really full production. It was probably prior to full production. It basically took place between the 1880s and the early 2000s, so just over 120 years or so. And almost all of that first 120 years was based on lead acid batteries. And then it slowly transitioned in the late 90s, early 2000s over to nickel metal hydride. But that was pretty much the end of that era. That pretty much was the end of the pre-EVs 1.0 era. It was right around about 2003 or so. And then we would get into what we consider to be the EVs 1.0 to 1.9 era. And the dominant factor of that era is the adoption of lithium-ion batteries that had transitioned over from basically consumer electronics and some other non-automotive industries into the automotive industry. But that was the defining factor, was the switch away from nickel metal hydride over to lithium-ion batteries. That increased the power capacity, increased the range. Okay, so now we're getting to the really important part, which is EVs 2.0. And there's not going to be one dominant technology. There's actually going to be multiple technologies that grow adoption, and some of them are going to be very regional specific. So certain markets are going to adopt certain technologies more than other markets. But really, at the end of the day, what it's about is the quick replenishment of the onboard energy storage. And this is really going to be based on a couple of core technologies. That's going to be ultracapacitors, solid state version of batteries, fuel cells. Obviously, we have our cryo technology with liquid air and liquid nitrogen. But what you're really doing is you're separating the energy capacity from the vehicle. And this is similar to how internal combustion engines were able to gain adoption too, is that it was that separation that allowed it to get adoption. Because internal combustion started off with you would buy gasoline a quart at a time. And then over time you had fueling stations and things like that allowed you to refuel in just a few minutes. And that is kind of now the expectation. And you're still going to have some of the what are soon to be legacy technologies, which is it slowly charging overnight at your home and things like that. Those are not going to go away. But in terms of what's being on the market, it's really going to be the technologies that can do the quick replenishment, whether that's a battery swap, whether it's a fuel cell, whether that's ultracapacitors at a very high charging rate, whether that's liquid air-based technology like we're doing. But at the end of the day, it's really going to be defined by that quick replenishment. And that's also going to change the interaction that people have with their vehicles, because now this is going to open up a bunch of different services. So for example, for a battery swap, you'd actually have someone go and do the battery swap for you. Take the vehicle down to a local battery swap and bring it back to you, and it all happens automatically. Same thing with, say, for the ultracapacitors, you can do on-demand quick charging, where someone will actually come right to your vehicle and quickly replenish the vehicle. You're also going to see crossovers with, say, restaurants and things like that, where they're going to offer you a quick charge in exchange for purchasing a meal and things like that. So just moving beyond the conventional expectations that people have for charging. And our technology is, we're basically an enabler, and we complement and we supplement. So for example, let's say fuel cells. Now, what we can do is we can provide emergency on-demand hydrogen in the event that someone is stranded. Okay, so in that scenario, we're not directly in the fuel cell business, but we're able to complement and supplement. Same thing in mobile quick charging. We can do low-cost mobile quick charging. We can charge at a very high rate. So for the vehicles that start to adapt these ultracapacitors, we'll be able to charge at extremely high rates. More specific to us as a company, we're going to have the modular pop-up refueling stations. So these are going to be located at the busy retail locations. So where you're already doing your shopping, there's going to be a pop-up that can provide this quick recharging, things like that. And we all do it independent of the grid. It's 100% zero emission. Another characteristic is going to help define the EVs 2.0 era is going to be the move away from the large battery packs. So that pretty much has been the primary change of EVs 1.0 up to what we consider like 1.9, as the battery packs have just gotten larger and larger and larger. And the EVs 2.0 is actually going to go the opposite. So the battery packs are going to get smaller because they can recharge so quickly. There's no reason to carry around a half-ton battery pack. The vehicles that do have a large battery pack, those are probably going to be geared more towards battery swap. So there's going to be a clear definition between vehicles that spend their time in the city, which are going to use capacitors or small battery packs, vehicles that are intended more for, say, road trips. They can accommodate a large battery pack, but it's probably going to be done based on a battery swap. You're not going to be carrying around a large battery all the time. Same thing with fuel cells, very similar to where it's going to be market specific. It might even be only use case specific, so it might be very specific use cases. So right now, if you have a vehicle that's from the EVs 1.0 era, there are certain trade-offs when it's really cold outside or it's really hot outside. It has a drastic effect on the driving range. And the EVs 2.0 are not going to have that issue. So it's really a complete step change. That's why we consider it a complete step change away from the previous generation. And anything that was in production EVs 1.0 is no longer going to be the cutting edge. Now, one of the most important features about EVs 2.0 that's not really discussed too often is the ability to retrofit existing vehicles. Now, this has a huge impact because right now there's just a physical limitation to the scaling of new vehicles being produced that are zero emission. However, when you can retrofit existing vehicles, and that's what EV 2.0 technology allows you to do, is retrofit existing vehicles, it completely changes the scalability, it changes your adoption, it changes your economics. And so there literally is going to be a step change that takes place as we start to enter the EVs 2.0 era. Feel free to contact us at 1-321-328-0850. You can also reach us at contact@CyromatiKs.com. And you can always keep up with the latest news at www.itsjustair.info.